I'm Kimberly.
And I'm Junior.
And we're in the band One Eyed Doll.
And we're on our Halloween tour, so... Ooh, scary. We have a ghost story. A little bit of a ghost story. Back in 2005, I bought a ranch out in kind of the sticks of outside of Austin. And this is where my first Texas studio was, where I met Kimberly, actually. It's a strange thing. I've never really believed in ghosts or anything like that. It's just not, I've never experienced anything like that. So I don't usually just buy into things unless I've actually had firsthand experience. So, I moved there with my whole band. At the time, I was in a band that had 6 members in it, and we all lived at the house. So it was always kind of noisy and weird, like stuff going on all the time. It was, but I had someone come in from California to record at the studio, and it was just me and this girl, and she was upstairs, and I had my kind of mixing area downstairs and her upstairs, and we were the only 2 people in the house, and we'd be in the middle of a take, and she'd say, "Jason, are you outside the door, like opening the door? Like, I'm trying to do a take." And I'm like, "No, I'm not. What are you talking about? I'm just, I'm downstairs." And every time she would start singing, the door handle would like somebody was trying to open the door. And so she just finally, she was like, "You know what? I'm freaked out. Like, let's do this some other time."
Like you're trying to scare me.
Yeah, but I was downstairs. I mean, there was no way
You have to be at your talkback mic for her to hear you.
Yeah, I mean, I was on the other side of the house. So
it's a really big house.
Yeah, and I was just like, I don't know what she's doing, but she's probably just nervous. She doesn't want to sing right now, so she's making an excuse.
You guys are blaming each other.
Yeah, and so then this, and mind you, this is this kind of like weird old house out in the middle of the sticks outside of Austin, so there's nobody around. It's like kind of out in the middle of nowhere.
It's out where the Texas Chainsaw Massacre was filmed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Movie.
Yeah, so you can envision how it still looks like that too out there. So then I had this band from San Antonio come up, and I had them set up in that room, and they all, like, immediately, I don't know what it was, but they all came down there. "Jason, can we record in a different room? We all are very sensitive to spirits, and we feel like there's bad spirits." And I remember I was like, "Are you guys all out of your mind? Like, what are you talking about?" Okay. And I like broke them all down. I literally had to break down their drums and their amps and everything, set them up downstairs because they were not going to play up in that room. And I was just baffled, absolutely. I was just like, okay. And this kind of thing happened several times over the years, but I just never bought into it, And eventually that band that lived in that house broke up, and it was just me. And I started to realize it wasn't just me. There was somebody else there. And in that room where I would have people record, it would just the light switch would turn on and off by itself all the time. The door would just slam shut. It's just me. If some things would be thrown down the stairs.
Yeah, it's poltergeist.
Yeah, and then I got so freaked out. There was one time I was emailing someone, and I just was typing out because I'm not going to get into there's some details that I'm not going to get into that made me just because I don't think there's any actual validity to it. It's just one of these things, like I started making up a story in my mind of what was happening. And so I started describing this story to someone, and above me, from above, the loud, just super loud 3 thumps, dum, 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 like it had to have been my whole bed, because my bedroom was right above my head where I was at. My whole bed had to have been lifted off the ground and slammed 3 times. And after that happened, I just moved out. I said, you know what, I'm moving. My friend had a spare room, and I owned this house, but I wasn't going to stay there alone. So I just moved out. I moved in with my friend James,
But then
And,
I needed to record an album, and I kind of made him move back.
Yeah, so
Like, this is where we're recording this album. This is what's gonna
so
happen.
so
This is great.
I had moved out for a good 9 months.
I like
I moved out for like 9 months. I hadn't gone back. Only went back every once in a while in the day, in the middle of the day, to like change things. And I had put the house up for sale, and I got this frantic call from my real estate agent. Jason, your house is haunted. And I was
trying
like,
to show people the house and all
yeah,
this stuff.
and she's like, I'm showing your house, and the lights are turned on and off, and the doors are slammed. I'm like, I know. Why didn't you tell me it was haunted? I'm like, I didn't want to tell anyone.
And it's hard to know like how much of that stuff is really just electrical issues or whatever.
Yeah, or wind draft doing things. But
settling. It's a handmade house. It's like just some guy built it, and but there were some, we did learn a little bit about the history of it, and there, there's some bad stuff that happens, and a lot of it seemed to revolve around this little girl, and that a lot of people saw a little girl when they were there.
So yeah, the other thing was I had this Mexican housekeeper come over while I was there, and she was cleaning, and it was kind of like the Mexican neighborhood of out in East Austin, like east of Austin, further out. It's not even in Austin, and so there's a lot of Mexican community out there. And she mainly spoke Spanish, but she spoke a little bit of English. And she says, she pulled me aside and she said, Jason, you know that there's the ghost of a little girl. She lives right at the end of the hall, and she has a head wound.
Her name is Jessica.
Yeah.
She knew that.
Yeah. So I was like, I had figured that out, strangely enough. And so that's our ghost story. We don't live there anymore. We sold the house.
Yeah, and I moved into that place, and I recorded all my albums there before Jason ever joined the band, and that was how we got to know each other. Was that he was my producer, and I would always just go out there and record. And I quite enjoyed the energy of the house. I really liked it. This kind of stuff would happen, and I was into it.
Yeah.
And it was very inspirational for me, and I felt like, sometimes sometimes something would happen while we were recording, but I didn't feel like it was like negative at all.
Right.
I felt really comfortable with it. But I don't know, I'm not superstitious at all. I really need logic and facts and science. But there's a lot that we don't know, and science is discovering new things all the time that we didn't know exist.
Or think was possible at all.
Black matter, stuff like that, and who knows? Energy is a weird thing, so. I'm not really sure what's going on in that house, but we have some ideas.
And I want to reiterate that it wasn't subtle, because
no, it was like,
it was very overt.
Slamming doors and then opening the door and slamming it again.
And the lights
like
coming
the
on and off.
Going.
Yeah. And I brought my friend over who was
pots
very
and pans in the kitchen when nobody was down there. It sounded like somebody would be cooking. And they're like banging pots and pans around. I'd run down there and nothing has happened.
Yeah. Well,
that cupboard wasn't open.
Yeah. In that room where I had people recording, I had my friend. I had one friend who would always make fun of me for telling these stories, and I would be like, well, believe me, I think it's only a 10% chance, 5% chance it's a ghost, like in the classic sense. Who knows what it is?
I mean, neither of us are religious in the slightest, and it's not like, we're not really about the afterlife and all that kind of stuff.
But it was predictable enough that I could take my friend over, and I said, look, come over right now. I hadn't been in the house. This was after I had moved out, because he was making fun of me for moving out of the house. Like, why are you paying rent to live somewhere else? You own a house. And I was like, come over. It's only going to take 5 minutes before you find out what goes on in there.
I was there for this.
And we went up, and he's just making fun of me. And I'm like, let's sit down in the room with the lights off. And we sat down, the lights off. Just sit there for like maybe 3 minutes. And I kind of called her name a couple of times, and
Jessica.
and the light turned on right in front
The
of
light switch went.
me. And there was no, I mean, there was no trickery. There's nothing. It's just me and him in the room, and he turned into a ghost, and he was like, "It's real. I'm leaving."
Yeah.
I was like, I know. It's who knows what it is, but
Yeah,
you know.
I mean, I definitely need, evidence and things to believe something. And that's something that hasn't been technically proven yet, but it was cool and spooky and fun for me, to be honest.
Lots of
I never
inspiration.
felt like I was in danger or anything like that. I just always, everybody who would see something and we wouldn't say anything to them about it ahead of time, they would be like, there's a little girl, something's wrong with her head. And a couple people were like, her name is Jessica or something, like she tried to say something, and like they swear they saw this little girl, but I never actually saw anyone or anything like that. But and so for me, I'm like, oh, it's a little girl, like if there's a little girl here, I want her to be comfortable, and I don't want, if everybody's scared and freaking out and causing negative energy, like, that's not cool. But yeah, I don't know.
So
Who knows if any of it's real or if we
Yeah.
were just going crazy, but
that's the One-Eyed Doll ghost story.
and all of our albums almost all of our albums were recorded there, so that's all highly influential in all of our recordings that happen at Nebulast. So Hole, Break, Monster, Sleep, Into Outer Space, all of those albums, that was all in all of the albums. If that helps explain anything.